Hello and good morning. Lovely to see you all here. Welcome to our 18th Holding Space webinar today. It's great to have your company for the hour that we have together today. My name is Jackie Short. I'm the Clinical Director of Sydney Centre for Creative Change, and I'd like to welcome you to our online space. We have a wonderful presentation for you today, focused on working with and supporting international students. I'm going to introduce our guest speakers in just a moment, but I'd like to welcome you one and all to this space today. I'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that I come to you from today, the Eora people of the Gadigal Nation, and pay our collective respects to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to our Indigenous brothers, sisters and colleagues, and to everybody here who's given up their time to be with us today. We have some special guests, and I'd like to introduce them by sharing my screen now and just showing you a little bit about what we're going to be doing today as well. So today the focus is working with and supporting international students, of whom there are many in Australia currently. So what I'm going to do in introducing this topic is introduce our guest panel today, who are all international students themselves and all students studying counselling here in Australia. After their 10-minute presentations each, I'm going to open the floor for questions. So if you do have anything you'd like to ask any of our lovely guest speakers today, you can ask by either indicating you've got a question, put your hand up and give us a wave if you've got your camera on, or you can use a chat box to ask a question as well, and they'll be very keen to answer your questions. After the question time, we're going to have about 5 or 10 minutes in small groups to have a discussion about what the presentation's been about and how it might impact on you and your work or your decision making in relation to studying and help seeking as well. Then we're going to have a quick prize giveaway. We're going to have a little special flag quiz today, and there'll be a prize for somebody at the end of today. So that's how we're going to be running today. So I'd like to welcome our 3 guests, and all of these impressive young women have come across our paths at Sydney Centre for Creative Change through either an internship with us or through their keenness to participate in some of our other training that we do here at Sydney Centre. So it is a great privilege to have each of them presenting today. I'd like to welcome our first speaker, Vineeta Giri, who is a final year master's student. She believes in the idiom, "A stitch in time saves 9," and wants to work with children and young adolescents to provide early intervention and support. She's been an intern, and a very impressive one this year, with us, and she's gained skill and resources to engage and support clients to provide creative and tailor-made support at the student placement she's currently at, and ideally to her future clientele. As an international student, Vineeta came here to Australia in her early 20s and has faced and overcome many challenges that international students face. And she's going to share briefly her insights about these in just a moment. Meilia Permata Wongso is a master's student of counselling and currently working in the field of anger management, which is part of her counselling placement program. Meilia has previously worked with different age ranges from adolescents to older adults. She has a strong interest in ACT and the implementation of art in therapy for a range of mental health issues. Meilia's lived in Australia for 6 years now as an international student and is generously sharing her experiences today that can provide insight for those of us who are mental health workers looking to better understand and support effectively international students. And our last speaker today, Yessica M. Berlina, is in 2018, Yessica took up the opportunity to come to Australia for a Master's in Counselling course. And this opportunity was a dream come true, but it didn't necessarily make adjusting to life in Melbourne any easier, even though it was a dream realised. In the first few months of being in Australia, Yessica experienced some mental health issues for the first time in her life. Accessing counselling services as an international student, she found an interesting experience, made even more so by the insight she had being a counselling student herself. Yessica is currently in her final year of her counselling course, and she's gained experience delivering mental health services for clients in disability assistance programs, with adolescents in early intervention and in a helpline service. Yessica believes in interventions that are aimed at clients' empowerment, guided by person-centred and other humanistic approaches, which I know is close to many of our hearts. All of our speakers today are generously giving up their time and sharing something of their personal experience. And they will be the first ones to say that they're not speaking for all international students in Australia, but are generously sharing some of the struggles, challenges and opportunities that they've found in both study and counselling, and being on the receiving end of services, as well as starting to provide some of those through their placements. So they're each going to reflect on something a little bit different. The reason why this topic is so important is because we in Australia have so many international students studying here. According to the Department of Education, Skills and Employment, in 2019, so just last year in Australia, we had more than 956,000. It's wonderful for us. It's a really rich opportunity to have a multicultural society, which we really celebrate in Australia, and to share our education system with our neighbours and friends around the world. Our international students were enrolled in various universities across Australia, and over 50% of these students last year were from Asian countries. A number of research studies on international students have found that they often underuse mental health services that are available freely. So our first speaker today, Vineeta Giri, is going to share some of her experience. So welcome, Vineeta.
Hello everyone, I'm Vineeta Giri. I'm a final year Master of Counselling student from India. Today I will be sharing some of the challenges that I have personally faced and some challenges that international students in general face while studying abroad. My first and foremost challenge began the minute my flight landed here and I realized that there was no one waiting for me at the exit. It was loneliness. My first month in Melbourne was not quite actually different from what we are now. I was locked in my room and house, and only then the walls felt like they were closing in on me. Going to the university was my only solace, where I had the opportunity to make friends and to interact with others. I remember my midsem break was the hardest for me. I knew I could reach back to my friends and families. They were just a call away, but I did not want to worry them. They were worrying whether I was eating all right, I was sleeping all right, if or not I had made any friends. And when I think about the students who've come here in the start of this semester, in the middle of this pandemic, my heart goes out to them. I can only imagine how lonely they must have been, never having the opportunity to set foot on campus, to make friends, or to explore Melbourne. It is lonesome for me now, but the simple fact that I have friends to meet and places to visit at the end of this lockdown gives me hope and joy. And loneliness does not just come from, the lack of company. When I first came here, I was afraid whether I'll find people to connect with, people who will share my passions and my interests. Otherwise, we might just be lonely in the company of people as when we were alone. For some people, also loneliness comes from not having an intimate partner. Many people, when they move here, they either move into long distance relationship. Some are maybe grieving from having broken up relationship in their home countries, while some just abstain from having relationships. They think like, what's the point of getting into a relationship for just 2 or 3 years? Another point that's closely associated with loneliness is homesickness. In one of the earlier phone calls with my mother, she was teasing me. Do you miss me and your family, or do you miss the fact that you don't have to do dishes or cook 3 meals? I'll be honest. I did miss not having to do the dishes or the laundry. But 2 years now, I miss the small things that I took for granted. I miss my home cooked food. I miss my dad waking me up, not my alarm clock. I even miss fighting with my sister. I have small reminders of me from home, like the cushion you can see on the screen, and some knickknacks that my friends gave me. And they give me comfort in times of when I feel down. 2 years now, I realize that loneliness and homesickness are just a part of my life here. There are some days when I'm absolutely fine, while there's others, but even the reminder of my sister's favorite ice cream leaves me high and dry. When we first come here, we not only struggle, we gain independence for the first time. We are exploring a number of things and have to make a number of life decisions, whether they may be as small as to what to cook for dinner tonight, or as life alternating as what minor subjects should I choose. I came here in my 20s and I was overwhelmed. Some students come here when they're as young as 16 or 17. Even those who come in their late 20s often find the most mundane tasks challenging. I remember combing through YouTube vlogs of international students to learn about the essentials that I would need here. I had PTV installed in my phone weeks before arriving. I had researched and planned which bank to open my account with, and then when I arrived here, I was running around the city looking for the nearest branch. I had the names Woolies and Coles memorized for my grocery needs. Yet I found myself at Target looking for a loaf of bread. The adjustment difficulties can be quite strenuous and challenging. In addition to navigating the hurdles of everyday life, we are also deciphering the societal norms and acclimatizing ourselves to the host culture. I remember standing on the right side of the elevator and my friend pulled me to the left. She's saying, that's it is for people to go down the line. In our culture, we address our teachers as ma'am or sir. And when I heard my lecturers being called by their first name, I was quite shocked. And I'll be honest, to this date, I find it quite uncomfortable to call them by their first names. I had a pretty small worldview when I first came here, and I was quite shocked to realize that I did not just have to adjust to the host culture here, but I also had to adjust to a number of people from other countries and ethnicities. I remember asking my father, what would you have done if you were here in my place? He said he would have explored as many cultures as there are here. And it's the best experience that I have here. International students often find it easier to interact with and make friends with people from their own cultures and countries, and international students from other countries. Sometimes we share same culture and we have had shared experiences. For some students, they feel that they have to blend in with the host culture. And in trying to blend in, it often makes us feel vulnerable, inferior, and judged. Also, failing to blend in can make people feel ill at ease at themselves, conscious of themselves, and affect their self esteem and make them feel helpless, lonely, and angry. Students also may often experience a change in perspective and worldview, a shift from focus of learning more about the host culture to an interest in their own cultural identity. Before leaving the country, I used to identify myself as someone coming from a certain state of my country. But now I wholeheartedly introduce myself as just an Indian. I have developed a deeper appreciation for my culture, my language, and my people. Another challenge that we face is in securing jobs part time or casual. Before arriving here, a lot of us are told, you can scrape your cost of living by getting through part time jobs or casual jobs. While it is true for some students, it is just a pipe dream for others. Not all international students come from wealthy families who can support them fully. Many have to take out loans to sponsor their education and stay here. I am fortunate enough that my parents can fully support me here. I still feel guilty about not having a part time job. I feel that, maybe there was this opportunity which I am missing out on. Maybe I did not put in enough effort. I also feel sad about missing out on experience of working at a part-time job, the joy of doing things on my own money. International students also face a number of different and difficult challenges while looking for part-time jobs, as we are also restricted by our visa conditions. We often worry about getting enough hours to cover our expenses. We are sometimes exploited and underpaid just so that we can get the money to make our ends meet. Getting job is not easy as well. It requires often to have a strong network, people who can vouch for us. Because often in our home country, we do not have any experience of working part time. It's not that we lack skills in it, it's just that there's no one who can take the chance on us. Some students go through a tiring experience finding a job. We all must have come across news of how adversely this COVID situation has impacted international students. Many have been out of job and now depend on various organizations to have their basic needs met. For international students, it's just not about getting the money for the job. Their work-life balance also comes essential. Many of their academics get affected because of this. And sometimes it's not just your grades, it's your uni life. You miss out on all the extracurricular activities that your uni has to offer. One of my friends, when she had a break from her work, she realized that she missed out on so many opportunities that her uni offered. The extracurricular clubs, meeting friends. It often just becomes go to uni, go to job, get home, and sleep. One of the things that my parents had given me a stern warning and strictly forbidden me was when coming here was to be wary of alcohol abuse or do drugs. One of my father's acquaintance's daughter, while studying abroad, had unknowingly fallen victim to drugs. When we come here, we've often experienced independence for the first time, and we often take this liberty to try out maybe smoking or try marijuana. Some just started out as a fun thing to do with friends, and when they can't even stop it because they are scared of the possibility of losing their only friends here. For some students, smoking or having marijuana may be just a form of stress reliever. They think I'll just use this when I have my assignments. This is just for me to get through the semester. But often it becomes a habit, and sometimes it adds to their financial expenses. There are some students who may think starting gambling as means of earning easy money to relieve or help with their finances, but there are chances that they might end up in debts and can adversely affect their academics and stay here. And last but not the least challenge that we often face here is in our academics. I remember my first assignment and the grade that I got. I had just got a passing grade. I was devastated. I put in all my energy and effort. I was questioning, how can I do so bad in my studies when studies is what I came here for? I felt like I was betraying the trust and faith my parents had put in me, and I was ashamed. I was also fairly confused because I did not know what or where I went wrong. You see, I was a good student all my life. We got in our scores over the weekend. So after beating myself up all weekend, I could not wait for the week to start to discuss it with my lecturer. My lecturer was very kind and helped me understand what I did wrong. Essentially, it wasn't what I did was wrong, but how I did was. And after discussing it with my lecturer and friends and accessing support from the library, I can now proudly say that I do have a few high distinctions in my transcript. The way assignments and research and exams are done here is quite different from what we are used to our whole life. We're often not used to the critical thinking oriented assignments or interactive teaching and learning style. We do benefit immensely from them, but it just does take a fair bit of adjustment and trial and errors on our part to get it right. These can be quite challenging and stressful for us international students. While I have shared some broader challenges that international students face, I'll now pass on to my friend Meilia, who will be sharing some of her own unique personal experiences. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vineeta. And we look forward to hearing from Meilia now, who's going to give us a slightly different slant on her perspective. Welcome, Meilia.
Hi everyone, my name is Meilia and I'm also an international student here in Australia. I first came here for my bachelor degree in psychology in 2015 and have continued my studies in the Master of Counseling. Firstly, I'd like to share some insight on the help-seeking behavior of international students while drawing from my own personal experience. Although mental health awareness is on the rise, the accessibility of the services unfortunately is still lacking. Not to mention, in some parts of the world, there are still many negative stigmas attached to mental health issues. So for many international students, we either do not know where or how to seek help, and even if we do, some might be hesitant about it. So ever since I was a kid, I had experienced some breathing issues, and it had gotten more noticeable as I went to middle school. And I remember that one day I had extreme breathing difficulties that my parent had to rush me to the hospital. However, the doctor couldn't find anything physically wrong with me, and they said that it could possibly be stress. Now, they were wondering what could a 12-year-old possibly be stressing about? And at that time, even though I did not have the answer to that question, I knew it wasn't stress, it was anxiety. What I was experiencing at that time, I didn't know what anxiety was, and I couldn't explain to my parents what I was experiencing because there's just no word for anxiety in Indonesian. So I ended up keeping my feelings to myself. How can you share something you yourself don't understand? However, I think my dad somewhat noticed that something was deeply bothering me. So what he did was he filled a basin full of water and told me to dunk my head in and scream as loud as I can. Did it help with my anxiety? Not really, but I was really grateful for the fact that he did try it. He did not understand what I was going through, yet he still tried to come up with something to help me. And I guess that's what everyone really needs, to know that you have that someone who will be there for you no matter what. And having experienced this has shaped how I feel my relationship with my clients. I might not understand their worldview or know what it's like to be in their shoes, but what's important is that I will never stop trying to support them through their healing process. And now fast forward to my 18-year-old self who just started uni in Australia. And finally, I was able to talk to a counselor because uni has offered free counseling services. Now, since mental health service was not available back home and there's a lack of mental health awareness where I live, I had to wait a couple of years to finally get the help I need. And through counseling, I finally received the tools and techniques that have helped to manage my anxiety. And I felt, it felt like a weight has been lifted from my chest. But just a couple of weeks ago, again, I have been experiencing breathing difficulties. And it was so bad that it woke me up from my sleep for several nights. And I thought to myself, I have been managing my anxiety pretty well. I haven't had panic attacks in a really long time. And there's nothing major going on in my life, so it's probably something else. So I decided to give my GP a call to make sure that there's nothing wrong with me. And after doing some blood tests, my result indicated that there's no physical issues that are going on, besides me lacking some vitamin D as I have been locked inside for almost a year. Anyway, the GP said the only possible explanation is that I'm experiencing anxiety. So even as a student who has been studying mental health for almost 6 years, I cannot believe that it took me a while to recognize my own anxiety. And after reflecting, I realized that I was actually quite overwhelmed these past few months. I have to get my hours done for my counseling placement. I have to look and move into a new apartment, all which I have to do while being locked down in Melbourne. And on top of that, I realized that I'm constantly worried for my friends and families back home in Indonesia because the situation there is pretty bad right now. And I think I did not realize that all of these little things were impacting my mental health because I just thought that it's something that everyone, including my friends, are going through right now. It has come to the point where I over-normalize my experiences, which makes them seem insignificant. For example, most of us international students probably know what it's like, to have to say goodbyes to the friends we've made while studying abroad. I feel like this experience is so normalized amongst us that we didn't even think twice about how we're left feeling lonely. From this example, I believe that we can often downplay or minimize our personal experiences because we believe our situation are simply a given outcome for being an international student. So we ended up not seeking help or support we need. Whereas I was fortunate enough to have the knowledge and awareness that encouraged me to seek help, I know it's not that easy for other international students to seek help as it's foreign to them. So although normalizing our experiences and challenges are great, as it allows us to feel less lonely and acknowledge, it is also important to promote help-seeking behavior. Because if we're simply normalizing these negative experiences without promoting the importance of seeking help, we will leave international students with a feeling of helplessness on their situation. Now, the second point I want to share can be seen on the slide. So even though I'm an international student and most of us may share some similar issues, which Vineeta has mentioned before, I believe the experiences that we have are unique to each one of us. Instead of simply putting us in the same box, we need to open the box because inside the box there are also different things that have made us who we are and shape our experiences, including our values, beliefs, culture, and upbringing. Now, many people may assume because I'm born and raised in Indonesia, I'm someone who is from a collectivist culture and have collectivist values, which to an extent is true. However, when I was growing up, I also had access to internet. So even though I have lived in a collectivist culture, I also grew up in an era where I had access to individualistic culture. I grew up watching Western movies and shows, which I know may not be the best representation of Western culture, but it led me to develop a curiosity of what it's like to grow up in an individualistic culture. For example, my favorite book/movie while I was growing up is the Harry Potter series. And one of the things I've learned from it is that being different is okay. It doesn't make you weird, it makes you special. However, coming from a culture that is oriented towards blending in and conforming to the group, I felt torn between wanting to blend in and wanting to be special. But it's hard when you're wanting to be different when there's very little room for you to be curious and explore your identity. And that was a really confusing time for me because at that age, between 14 and 15-year-old, you start to form your identity. And I guess I felt a bit lonely because there's no one I could relate to besides some fictional characters. And that was when I decided that I want to study abroad because I feel like I owe it to myself to figure out who I am, what I want, and what my personal values are. And I always thought by coming to Australia, I could dip my toes into the individualistic culture I've always pictured myself living in. Because to me, individualistic culture means freedom. And so I decided to get a tattoo when I turned 19 because why not? It's something that I've always wanted and it's just a way for me to express myself. However, once I got the tattoo, I felt really, really guilty because I'm scared of what my parents' reaction would be. Because, in my culture, having tattoos are frowned upon, especially if you're a woman. So even though having a tattoo is not in contrast to my personal values, as I believe I can do whatever I want with my body, but having a tattoo has challenged the cultural norms that my community upholds. Although I'm not worried about what people would think of me, I do feel guilty when I think about how this might reflect badly on my parents. Will people judge my parents for, letting me get a tattoo? I thought when I came to Australia, I would be free of all the values and norms that my culture holds. But I was wrong. I have learned that no matter what, my culture and its value will always be a part of me. It's not something that I have to challenge or run away from. Feeling this sense of guilt just simply means that I care about my family and nothing else. The reason why I'm sharing this specific experience is to show that it's important to look beyond our cultures, because us international students probably have experienced conflict between our cultural values and personal values. Sometimes it feels like we have to choose one or the other, but I don't think that we do. So in counseling practice, when working with people who comes from different cultural background, we as counselor or mental health practitioner should always be aware of our own values and to be more sensitive when we want to challenge our clients. This goes the same for me. If I were to work with a client who come from a similar cultural background, I will have to, hold back my personal experience and assumptions about the clients to prevent countertransference. And another thing that counselors should remember when working with international students is that many of us has never experienced counseling before. So sharing something personal can be very scary and overwhelming. When I first seek counseling, the first thing that crossed my mind while talking to my counselor was, will my counselor understand what I'm saying? Will they judge my choice or action? Will they think badly about my values, culture, or family? And I think these are something that a lot of international students have felt while asking for help, especially when we want to address something that may not be as easy to talk to about in our home country or in our community. For example, sexuality is something that is quite taboo in my country, so many of us has never had the opportunity to feel safe to discuss and explore about this issue. While these are my personal experiences that stood out to me the most, I'm sure that every international student have their own journey and experiences. So for international students who are watching this, I know it's not an easy thing to do and it takes courage to share, but there is a safe space out there for you if you do need to seek help and support. Now I will hand this over to Yessica, who will also be sharing her own unique experiences as an international student. Thank you.
Thank you, Meilia. And welcome, Yessica.
Jackie. Hi, everyone. I'm Yessica, and thank you for joining and listening to us today. I hope by now, after listening to Vineeta and Meilia's story, you have become more curious of this huge and diverse collective group called International Student. And today, I will talk about my experience in related to three main things. The first one is English as a second language, and second one related to needs, and the third one is related to mental health services. So many of us know this, language is culture. So it is a culturally defined tool, and we use that tool to socialize and to function within societies. And it can be implied that when you have high proficiency in a language, it means that you have a better understanding of that culture. So as an international student, I came from Jakarta, Indonesia, and my home country, Indonesia, is enormous. Almost 300 million people living there, and there are currently approximately 700 languages are spoken. And my first language is Bahasa Indonesia. My second language is, I'm not quite sure, because do we rate it based on proficiency or do we rate it based on chronological order or like what I learned first? Because like most Indonesians, we are multilinguals. And English is not even my second language. There are other languages that I have learned throughout my life. There's the Korean language, French, and the language of my tribe, Hata Batak. And because language is culture, being multilingual means that different cultures influence me in my beliefs and my values, to name some. Similar to what happens here in Australia, where different cultures and languages exist. Here in Australia, one of the most frequently asked questions about my name is, how do you pronounce it or how do you spell it? which after trial and error period, I now always answer with like Jessica, but with a Y. Many people choose to just call me Jessica anyway. And I wouldn't say that I liked it because my father gave that name to me and there's a personal meaning behind it. I thought to myself often, it can't be that hard to pronounce until I started to see some names in Australia that are not pronounced as I thought it should be pronounced. For example, this AFL player, first name Gary, last name, I thought it's pronounced Rohan or Rohan, but apparently it's Rowan. And this station, the name of the station is apparently not Pakenham, but it's Pakenham. So yeah, you can see that the name Rowan and Pakenham are not common in my country, similar to how the name Yessica is not common in Australia. What I have learned from this is that names have meanings and meanings can be culturally attached. In supporting international students who may have names that are uncommon in Australia, we may need to be curious and taking the time to learn the names because it can mean a lot for people. And the same goes for international students. Some names in Australia may look familiar to you, but they may be pronounced differently. So be curious, and as we learn some things, just by learning how to pronounce names, we probably can learn a thing or two about the Australian culture as a whole. And in the context of counseling, it is suggested that when expressing feelings, multilingual people still prefer to do so in their native or first language. Many of us know that it's not easy to translate feelings into words. It can sometimes feel like the picture on the left side. It feels like pushing random bricks and trying to make a complete wall. Sometimes it feels like pushing random words to make a complete sentence. It feels like that sometimes. So in talking therapy, the traditional form of counseling, it can be extra challenging for international students whose first language is not English. They have to translate their feelings into words, and then they have to translate that into language, into the English language. For me personally, it can sometimes feel like the picture on the right. What I wanted to say inside my head was like this gigantic, powerful, multi-dimensional dragon. But when I'm talking, what come out is this small, cute, two-dimensional dino. So sometimes it's not translated well. And in my Master of Counseling course, I had the opportunity to provide individual counseling for clients as a part of my placement program. And there are times when my clients say words or terms that I don't understand. And the first time it happened, I was panicked and I pretend to understand. I did not want to ask my client because I'm afraid that they will think I'm not proficient in English and therefore I won't be able to help them. But now I realize that my need for acknowledgement of my proficiency in English may be harmful for my clients. I can misunderstood or misinterpret some things. I have started to see that I can be more helpful to my clients when I learn to be more comfortable in being me, in my English language proficiency and my identity. Turned out, what I'm scared of never happened. I can ask them when I don't understand some words, and most of the time they paraphrase it, and it gives us both more in-depth understanding of the issues. And when communicating with people whose first language is not English, what I found not helpful is repeating the same words or sentences in a louder voice. So just repeating the same word with gradually bigger volume. It's not helpful because when we don't understand you, most of the time we don't understand the word or the sentence or the accent. So the volume of the voice or our hearings are not the problem. I remember when it happened to me, it's humiliating and disheartening. The better way is to paraphrase or replacing some words. So in supporting international students, it means that longer gaps between sentences and some awkward silence or some grammar errors should be anticipated and allowed. And just like what Meilia's story has told us, we cannot just assume that when English is not the first language, it is also not the preferred language. Like Meilia, I grew up watching movies and listening to music in the English language. So there are things that feel more comfortable to be expressed in English. And it is possible that I can find new ways of communicating my feelings in the way that my native language will not allow. So give us a chance and give us more time. For international students, the message is similar. We need to anticipate that we may need longer time to think, and that's okay. We may make some mistakes in words or grammar, and that's okay. And because it takes time to develop a communication style that is on the same level as we have in our native language. But it's not impossible. The next thing I want to talk to you about is the fulfillment of needs. In providing the mental health services, it is important to assess the client's unmet needs. I like to think about it with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. There are basic needs that needs to be fulfilled. Physiological needs or safety. Although, because we need to be online more often, 2020 it's probably look more like this now with Wi-Fi as the most basic needs. This model is appealing to me because when I was in primary school, we are taught that there are primary, secondary, and tertiary needs. There are levels of needs, and primary needs such as food and shelter should be fulfilled before other needs. So it's parallel to physiological needs that Maslow has in his hierarchy of needs. Just like what Vineeta talked before. So for many international students, some basic needs can be challenging to fulfill. The basic needs for food can be unmet for students who have different dietary requirements. So they probably have trouble finding culturally appropriate food. And for shelter and safety, for many international students, they probably share accommodations with living spaces with someone they just met. And when they don't get along with their housemates, their home in Australia may not feel like the safest and most comfortable place for them. But mostly what international students lack is social support and belongingness. Coming to Australia, many of us lost our social support network. I remember one of the first times I feel at home in Australia is when I developed friendships with my friends here. There's Pim, who is attending here today, who is my first friend in Australia. And there are Meilia, Vineeta, and another friend called Lee, who has gone back to Taiwan early this year. My need for belongingness and safety was met simply by knowing that I will not be alone on the train from Huntingdale Station to Melbourne Central Station after class. I had my 3 friends who will wait for me and sit with me on the train. The memory of us discussing everything on our way home after class is one of my most treasured memories of my Melbourne life. And the third one, the thing that I will talk to you about is about the mental health services. For most people in Indonesia, mental health as a concept is less popular or less discussed compared to physical health. We go to doctors when we have any physical health issues, but we try to keep and solve mental health issues on our own. Many of my friends in Indonesia believe that mental health service is a luxury. In some ways, I agree. I am privileged to have my basic needs such as food and shelter to be fulfilled, and that I have formal education in psychology and counseling. So I have positive view and adequate understanding related to mental health and the services. But many of our friends don't have that privilege. For many international students, there's no prior experience in accessing mental health services. Understandably, there can be so many inaccurate beliefs around the service. Like, if I attend a counseling session, will my lecturers know? Will my name be recorded? Will it affect my visa? Will my grades be affected? And for me, one of my inaccurate beliefs is that mental health services are only for when my issues are becoming too heavy, too severe, or prolonged. On the second month of living in Melbourne, I experienced insomnia for weeks. I feel tired all the time. I feel sad. My body feels heavy, and it never happened to me before. I was confused because things were going so well. I am doing great at my course. My brother is here with me, and I live in the most livable city in the world that year. My dreams came true. So why do I feel sad? I shouldn't feel sad. I should feel happy and grateful and stop complaining. But the more I think about it, the more I feel guilty. And I tried everything: exercise, eating healthy, nutritious food, joining clubs, meeting new friends. Nothing worked until I feel so weak and hopeless. And then I think about counseling. Unfortunately, the process to book an appointment can be complicated. We cannot choose a date because it's up to the counselor's availability. And sometimes there can be a long list. And my first counseling session was scheduled on my birthday. At first, I wanted to cancel it, but then I decided I decided to just do it because I can use it as a birthday gift to myself. Was it a good birthday gift? I certainly didn't think so when I got out of that counseling session that day. I felt worse and I felt unheard. I felt minimized and dismissed. The counselor gave me flyers about mindfulness and ways to reduce stress, such as exercise, eating healthy, nutritious food, joining clubs, and meeting new friends. Looking back, why didn't I say anything? Why didn't I tell my counselor that I've done all that and nothing worked? I realize now it is related to how I perceive counselors. I was taught since I was a little girl to respect elders, teachers, and authority figures. And I thought of counselor as someone who I should respect, especially because I am a counseling student. So I see my counselor as a role model, as someone who has been in my field longer than me. So I couldn't possibly challenge them. I am not at that level. Fortunately, I realized that my feelings are valid and I did not stop looking for help. I have now found a counselor who is more compatible with me. So I believe that in supporting international students, power imbalance needs to be addressed. It can be done by explaining the nature of counseling, how it should be client-centered, how it is a teamwork, and how the counselors are not teachers telling them what to do. And with counselor, the client has the right to have different opinions and they can say whatever they want to say and they can challenge them when things are not working. For international students, I can say that counseling was an experience where I feel truly listened to, and it is a place to learn healthy coping mechanisms. I now have some tools that I can take with me for when I experience mental health issues after I finish my study in Australia. I can take it back to Indonesia with me or anywhere. The thought of pouring your heart and talk about your issues with a stranger may be scary and weird at first, but know that as doctors have helped you with physical problems, mental health professionals like counselor can help you if you want to with your mental health issues. So as a summary, today I talked to you about three main things. Language, the first one, language should not be a barrier to the counseling process. And the second one, unmet needs are often unassessed, so we can probably assess and explore it. And the third one, counseling can be a significant experience for international students. It can be the first experience, but we can make it a good first experience with caution. And as I am now on my final semester of the course, I'm getting ready to say goodbye to Melbourne and my status as an international student and as temporary Melbournians. And I highly recommend being an international student. Take that chance when you get it. And it is an experience that is unique and precious. And I learned so much about myself during this experience. And I'm going to look back fondly on this chapter of my life. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Yessica. Thank you to all our guest presenters today. It was great to hear from you and hear from your very personal experiences of being international students here in Australia. And I know many of us here may have some questions either about the student experience itself or about particularly how those of us who might work in mental health areas could better support international students. So what we're going to do is have an opportunity for some questions for a few moments. And then after the questions and answers, Aidan's going to put us into some breakout rooms. So there'll be about 3 people in each group, and Meilia, Vineeta and Yessica will be in one of different groups and may be available in your small group to answer other questions if you have them. So before we're in those breakout rooms, I'd like to offer you the opportunity to ask questions if you'd like to. And I think there's already some questions here, which is great. It's an amazing experience to hear your sweet voice with such a casual and impact presentation. Oh, that's a lovely feedback to one. I'm sure all of you have sounded like that to me too. A question from Gabby here. Could Meilia please clarify what saying goodbye to friends meant for her? Was that saying goodbye to friends in Indonesia or saying goodbye to friends coming and going in your host country, so in Australia? Meilia, do you want to answer that question?
Yes. Hi, Gabby. Thank you for your question. I think it's both, actually. So when I first came here, I had to say goodbye to the friends back in Indonesia. And even when I got here and made new friends, some ending up having to go back to their own countries. And especially because of COVID, I did not have the chance to say goodbye to some of my friends who had to leave Australia. And because of the travel ban, I don't even know when or if I will actually see them again, which is sad, but yeah.
Can see Gabby nodding in thanks to that. So thank you, Meilia. Does anyone else have any questions? If you have your camera on, please just indicate with your hand up. I'll invite you to share your question, or feel free to type it into the chat as well. I have a question for each of you. I wondered if there was one piece of advice that you could give international students who had just arrived in Australia about mental health. What might that be? What might be that one piece of advice, Vineeta, that you would give?
I have personally never accessed mental health support, but sometimes when I look back, I think that maybe I should have. So maybe if it's as minor as being homesick or lonely, or just stressing with something, so even as small as something, be open and ask for help.
Lovely. Thanks, Vineeta. How about you, Meilia?
For me, when I first came here, I attended the orientation week, and there was flyers everywhere about mental health, accessibility in our uni, which was really helpful. So I know how to seek help and like where to go. But yeah, so just look for the information because uni mostly provides it, I believe.
Excellent. Thanks, Meilia. And Yessica?
It's probably similar to my friends because I think one thing I would like to say to international students who have just arrived here is to accept that feeling, because you have just moved to a new place where you live so far away from your family and your friends and your support network. So it is understandable that you can feel lonely and sad and unhappy or scared. So my advice is to not keep it alone inside, to really try to seek help wherever you can, and just don't keep it alone inside.
Yeah, thanks, Yessica. The question here from Christine, who works as a mental health counsellor supporting international students. Are there any tips and tricks for how best to reach out to students and let them know that there is mental health support and it isn't something to be afraid about? Particularly, as you said, it isn't necessarily something that's as well known or talked about in Indonesia and India. Yessica, do you want to, we'll go backwards this time. Yessica, could you respond to Christine? Is anything specifically that counsellors could be doing more to make their services available?
Yeah, I guess, yeah, I've heard this thing over and over again, like how many of my international students' friends are afraid to seek mental health service, because I think one of the main reason is it's a foreign concept. Like I said in my presentation, like the terms and conditions, they don't really know. Like, if I seek mental health support at school, will my teachers know about this? Will this affect my grades? So I think one of the first thing that we can do is to psychoeducate, so giving an information out that seeking mental health support, mental health services will not affect your grades. I will not tell your parents about it. There's a confidentiality between the counselor and the client, and that's probably where I would start. And I would say that for international students, it can be more comfortable to do things together. So like a group activities related to mental health education, for example. So knowing that they're not alone accessing, they're not alone having mental health issues. It will help really, very much. And so yeah, having group activities so it can be normalized.
Yeah, thanks, Yessica. Vineeta and Meilia, would you like to add anything to that conversation? There's a question maybe for you, Vineeta, a bit more specifically about that. Is it recommended to provide some sort of perhaps supportive guidelines to international students from the host university, maybe in light of what Yessica's just been talking about, what the services are and what it means should you access them around confidentiality? Is there anything you want to add to that, Vineeta?
I think you need to advertise it, but somewhere it gets lost, like, because sometimes international students are too busy to even consider it. Like, I have my school, I have my assignments, like, why should I bother with it? Sometimes these thoughts also cloud them, I have to juggle so many things. So the more they know about it, or if they think that, they don't have to hit rock bottom to it, the more they can access it. So, yeah.
Thank you, Vineeta. Anything you want to add to that conversation, Meilia, just before we finish up our question time?
Not really, because Yessica pretty much covered it and I agree with what she said. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all again for that very rich and very personal and relevant conversation. And I wasn't aware of the tattoo either, so I hope that isn't a big disclosure that your family's just finding out about today. No, good, excellent. Aidan, I wondered if you might be able to put us into breakout rooms now. So you get a little invitation to join. I hope you do join and have a conversation with those in the group about what you gained from this and how it can help you either as a student or a supporter of international students. What have you learned today that can help you help them? Just 5 minutes and then we'll come back together. Nice to have you all back here from the breakout rooms. Is there anything anyone would like to share about what they discussed in their groups?
Yeah, sorry, I was just discussing, but the time actually ran off. So yeah, okay, is it fine if I can say something?
Please do.
Yeah. So I was just like saying that what I heard everyone's speech and stuff, like definitely as an international student, it is very difficult for us to get a part-time job and full-time. I've faced the same problems as my friends over here who gave the speech right now. And I completely understand for everyone who is international, it's definitely not really like an easy task when you come to a foreign country because you're away from your family, friends, and everyone. So I hope like with the current situation right now, what all we are facing, this was a really like a must talk today to hear and to learn so much about everyone's individual experience. So thank you for all your speeches. It was amazing.
Thank you, Sahir, for that lovely feedback. And I think even though Vineeta and Yessica and Meilia were talking about their own experiences,
yes,
no doubt it really did obviously touch your own experience here and other people as well who are here and who'll be listening to this afterwards. So thank you for those. Gabby, did you want to offer something also?
Yes, I just want to thank the three girls, Meilia, Yessica and Vineeta. I was telling Yessica that I've been uniquely an international student counsellor for more than 20 years, but I have learned a lot today. I found this a very enriching experience, and I've got quite a few things from them to take back to try and make my support for international students, to improve it, make it better. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gabby, for those generous reflections as well. And I know you're the head of a welfare team at a large institution that provides counselling to students. So I'm sure that will be a very rich offering that you take back to your campus as well. So thank you for being here and sharing, and thank you to all of our presenters today. We've just got one more thing to do. I'd like to offer you a special gift. So what we have is, now that we've had a chance to connect in, to talk to a couple of other people in a small group, you've also now got an opportunity to do two things. We have one more of these free presentations available at the end of the year. So we've been running these free webinars all year, and all of them that we've done so far, the 18 of them, are available if you wanted to download and watch any of the webinars. The reflection on December 11th will be on this year, and it's been challenging for all of us, international students, mental health providers, teachers in other capacities. So if you'd like to join us for that and hear another panel of people from a range of venues around Australia working in different areas in mental health, do feel free to join us for that free one, and you can register online as you did today. Again, all for being here today, and thank you again to our special presenting panel today, Yessica, Meilia and Vineeta. Thank you all for coming, and look forward to seeing you next time. Keep well, everybody.
Jackie, thank you for hosting it.
My great pleasure. Thank you all.
And Aidan too.
Oh, thanks.